Alright, I'm excited about this tutorial. I want to go through this fairly fast. This is how you switch from V-Ray to Corona and the essentials I found I needed in order to make that switch. Here's a scene with V-Ray. Here's a scene with Corona. We know you can make great renders, but how do you switch over? What do you need to know? Let's take a look. Your materials are going to be very similar, but they are going to be easier. In V-Ray, I've been using a lot of fall-offs, going into the reflection and glossiness and adjusting those. In Corona, you're not really going to need those fall-offs, so you can delete those out if you see them and just use the scene without. Now, if we just take a Corona material here, and I'm just going to take a V-Ray material just to show you some similarities and some differences. Here you have your diffuse, and in Corona, this is your diffuse, but in addition to the map and the color, here you have the amount, so you can adjust this down or up, and you're probably going to be using this with metals, because in V-Ray, when you come in here and you have your reflection, you turn this off, Fresnel off for metals. But in Corona, you're not going to be doing that. In Corona, you have to, if you want Fresnel off, you've got to put this up to 999. Here, this is basically a slider between fully reflective, like reflecting the environment, and how much you see of the diffuse. This is in V-Ray. So if you set this here, you've got like 30% diffuse, and you've got 30% environment, and the rest is the diffuse. And so that's all it is in V-Ray. In Corona, you set this up and you go, okay, look, make this reflection level 1, and we've got Fresnel set at 999, and the color set at white. This, by the way, you also need to push up. You don't have this separate in V-Ray, but in Corona, the reflection and the color are separate. But when you've put this up, let me just show you. If I open a preview window here and I open this up, and then I come in here on diffuse, look, if I put this diffuse, I'm just going to put this up to white just to make it clearer. Do you see how that changes the edge? Look, if I bring this level cut down to 0, that gets darker. If I put it up, so even though you've got no Fresnel and you're reflecting a lot of the environment, you still have diffuse coming through, which you don't have in V-Ray. So you need to also adjust this. Now, I'm not saying it's correct in metals to put this all the way down at 0. I know people have said that in the past, but you need to realize that when you're doing that, you're saying there's no GI coming off this item. All light is being absorbed by it when you make the diffuse black. And in reality, metals, light hits them and it does bounce back into the scene. So, I'm not saying it's correct to put it down at 1. I'm not saying it's correct to move it all the way down. That's something I'll have to cover separately. What I'm trying to say here is realize you need to adjust the diffuse, unlike in V-Ray. That's important. Okay, just going through this material quickly. Here you have volumetrics and SSS. So this is where you have, like you have your V-Ray fog. Here you've got your fog color and your multiplier. And here, if you set this to volumetric scattering, and then you can play with these colors, and that'll work out. But also they don't have a fast SSS2 material like you do in V-Ray, so you're going to be needing to use this SSS and then work on your subsurface scattering here. If you click on Advanced, you get self-illumination, but here it says don't use this as a main light source. Instead, you can come in here and you can use Corona light material, which is kind of different to in V-Ray. In V-Ray, you wouldn't use a V-Ray light material as the main light source. You would use a mesh light. But Corona doesn't have mesh lights in it. It doesn't have an option on the light to be a mesh light. So instead, you're going to be taking this and assigning this to a mesh in order to get that light. So that's fairly simple. And you can just work here, intensity, color, or your texture map, opacity, etc., etc. Now, if you render out in the virtual frame buffer, and then you want to save this, you can just click on here and save as CXR. And when you do that, it'll open up and ask you where you want to save it. You can save it. Now, I've already saved this out. Okay, if you do it this way, you can double click on this. This will then open in the separate Corona image editor. Alright, so here it's opened up. So now you can then play with this. You can play with your tone mapping, your LUT, your bloom and glare, your sharpening and blurring, denoising, and you can play around with your light mix. So you can get this how you like, and then you're going to click on Save All, and save these as opening XRs, and just go where you want and just click Save, and it's going to save out all the passes. Okay, you can come into Photoshop, you can go File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack, and then you can browse to those, and you can load them all in. And it's going to load all of these in to one file, and then you can work on those. Now let's talk, since we got this open, let's talk about light mix. This is super cool. So here you can just come in and you can just turn off your various lights. And you can also adjust them, so you can adjust the color. You know, here, let's put this to 3. You can go Corona Sun. You know, you can see, let's make it twice, let's make it, oops, sorry, 3, let's put this back to 1. You can adjust the color if you like. So you can play around with this and adjust all of this. And you can just get it looking exactly how you like by doing it in here. Rather than spending hours testing every single light, you can use this if you like to test your lights and adjust your lights after you've done the render. Since we talked about light mix, if you want to set it up, you set it up this way. You just say set up light mix. Now you have these different options, instanced, grouped, individual, and you can see how much memory is being used. You'll probably look at this and go like, Jesus Christ, that's too much. I don't want that amount of layers being created. I don't want this amount of memory being used. So what you can do instead is you can select the items you want in your light mix. So I'm going to press H. And I've got just lights selected here. You can just turn off everything and select lights if you like. And I've opened all the groups, so none of these are grouped. Then you can select your lights, press Shift, select all of those, press OK, Alt Q, isolate them. And now when I click up Setup Light Mix, see the memory is much lower, layers 6. And so basically, it's only going to set it up for the items you have which are in your scene at this point in time. This means if you want V-Ray light, if you want Corona light materials to be in there, then you're going to need to be also taking your light materials and isolating those as well, and then clicking on Setup Light Mix. But this is how your light mix works. Now, if you look at this render, an important point, this was one of the first renders I did with Corona. See, I had this noise here at the top edge. So you might find you have this noise, and you're trying to figure out what's causing it and how to get rid of it. And the way you get rid of it is, if I take these walls, that's where the noise was occurring. And if I press F3, so you can see these are closed. This is not open geometry. So it's not like light is getting in here and bouncing around. But I do see that noise up there. So the way you handle it is you put on a shell modifier. You know, make sure this is going inwards and not outwards. You know, you don't want to be adding and weight to your walls. But if I put this inwards, you can't see it. But what this is going to do is, you see it's there on the side, if I press F3. What this is going to do is it's going to get rid of that noise. And I'm not sure if it's on the walls or if it's being caused by the ceiling. I just don't know, I haven't run tests. But in this case, I just take the ceiling as well. And also you can see this is closed geometry. And I put a shell modifier on that, and I would have that also going inwards. And then I know if I render this again, that noise is not going to be there. So if you get noise in corners like that, just put a shell modifier on and you'll be fine. That'll handle that error. Now, you're probably used to V-Ray hair and fur. In Corona, you're going to be using hair and fur world space modifier, which you can find right here. So you're going to use that instead of V-Ray hair and fur. Now, when you try to assign a material to this, you have this custom shader. This doesn't work in Corona 5. What you can do is come into your material parameters and you put the image on and you put it on here and you make sure it's tiling and has the same UVW as that. Now this, if this is black, you're really going to have a hard time getting this to show. So I've made it white, but being white, it sort of bleaches the image. You get some of the image and some of the white. So this doesn't work perfectly at all. But what you can do is you can adjust the color. There's various things you can do on this in order to get this looking correct. I would take this and bring it down and put a Bezier smooth on, make it a bit darker, and then increase the saturation. And basically by making it darker, I'm trying to offset this white, you see? And then I might put a color correction node and increase the saturation and do that. But you're not going to get, by doing this, you're not going to get the same amount of saturation that you get through here, the same colors, vibrancy in the colors. There is another way to do it to get some vibrancy. It only works in flat objects, but that's a subject for another tutorial. The point here is use this hair and fur world space modifier instead of V-Ray hair and fur. Now, lights are somewhat different. I'm going to press T, go to top view, Z for zoom. I'm going to come in here and I've got lights. And if I make a light, I'm going to go Alt Q and open this. Alt W, press F3 just so I can see through it. And let's put this down to a more real size, 50. And you see these lines coming off the light? That's just the intensity. If I drop this down to 1000, you'll see they get much smaller. If I put it to 10,000, they get much larger. That's all that is. Now you have sphere lights, you have rectangle lights, you have disc lights, and you have cylinder lights. By default, all of these points are clicked on, like this, when you bring a light into a scene. These are fairly self-explanatory: visible directly, visible in reflections, refractions, generating caustics. Now this you don't have in V-Ray. This is important. The basic idea between this button is a light normally is a light emitter in the real world is a solid object. So if something else were to shine a light on that light would cast a shadow. So here, what this does is if you turn it off, that stops the light from casting its own shadow. If you turn it on, it means other lights hitting it are going to cause it to cast a shadow. So, put that on or off depending on what effect you want from the light. I found when I was first doing scenes I had lights casting shadows. I didn't know why. This is why. Now HDRI does not work the same. We're all going to be used to coming in here, going into V-Ray, putting a V-Ray light into the scene, taking this light and making this a dome and putting your HDRI in here. So we're used to doing that. Corona doesn't have this. In Corona what you do is you take your HDRI and you come here into rendering, you go into your environment and you plug it directly into here. You have three options of using an HDRI in the scene. You can go into maps and you can use a V-Ray HDRI. And in Corona, you can use a Corona bitmap. And you also have maps general, bitmap. You can also use this if you want. Now out of these three, I'm not going to use that. I could use either this one or I could use this. Obviously, change this to spherical for an HDRI. I always go with the V-Ray HDRI instead of Corona bitmap. Now, if you don't have V-Ray installed, you can always, you're not going to buy V-Ray, you can always download V-Ray trial, install that, and then you'll have your HDRI, V-Ray HDRI, which you can use in your Corona scene. Now, the reason I would have this and use this is simply because if I set this horizontal rotation correctly at 90 degrees, like I know 0 is this way, I know 90 is here, 180 degrees, 270, so you get this all coming around here. I know this is set to 90, so I know it's coming here. In Corona, I have rotation here, and 0 means it comes from this way, and 1, it considers that one rotation, so 1 is coming from the same place. So if I want it to come from 90 degrees, I'd have to set this at 0.25. And then I would have to set it at 0.5 to be 180 degrees, and so on and so forth. Personally, I just find it easier to just use degrees. I'm used to thinking with these, and so I'll use this V-Ray HDRI. It is worth doing your own tests. You will find both come out slightly differently, but feel free to go around and test and play around with those. What I will say you may find yourself doing is putting an HDRI in and also using a Corona sun in order to add a direct light into the scene. When you use normals, bitmap normals, in V-Ray, you'll be used to opening this, coming in, and clicking on override. And this is in order to get the normal map to look correct. In Corona, you don't need to do that. The Corona normals map, which you'll find right here, Corona normals, this has add gamma to input. And so you just click on this, and it just adds the gamma directly in the Corona normals. So that's a nice feature that just makes it a little bit easier to use properly. And then you can just plug that straight into bump. You'll be used to using V-Ray two-sided materials. In Corona, what you're going to be doing is getting your Corona material, and to get a similar like see-through amount of the material, you're going to be playing with your translucency, and you might also be adding in a little bit of refraction, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 or something like that. And then to get two maps in there, you're going to need to use this Corona front-back map. And you can put this directly into the diffuse or into whichever map slot you like, and then you can put your front map and back map in there. And that's how you're going to duplicate the V-Ray two-sided material in Corona. If we go through these render settings quickly, we've already covered the light mix, and I'm just going to cover this interactive rendering. Interactive rendering is awesome. I'm going to take this actually, let me just get into the scene. Close this. I'm just going to turn off this hair and fur because it's going to take ages to get this ready. Now if I click on Start Interactive, what it means is I can adjust and I can check all of the materials in the scene and make sure these are coming out the way I want them to come out. And I can do this relatively fast. So here we have the scene. If I click on this little plus, I can go 2D pan zoom mode. And it means I can then pan around the scene without moving the camera. So I can come in here on this chair, and this is going to come straight in on the chair. And I can open my material editor, I can pick this material, I can come in here to this color correction for instance, I can adjust this hue shift, and I can see what's happening here. And so I can very easily and quickly adjust my materials to match what the client has sent. So I can say, okay, I'm seeing too much of the scene, this is too reflective. Let's drop this down. And so you can very quickly get the materials looking exactly how you want them. You know, I can take the wood, and he can say, let's have a light wood. So maybe I put this up to 2. You get the idea. You can very quickly adjust this, and then once you've got that looking the way you want it to look, you can just move away and you can go on to your next thing. You go, okay, let's take this chandelier, let's work on this. Then I can pick this material, I can start working on this material and seeing how this works, and I can just go through and adjust one material after the other. And then when I'm done, I can click on the plus and come out of 2D pan zoom mode. And then see what it looks like overall. So that's one of the beauties of interactive rendering. Is it just makes it very fast to adjust your materials and to get them looking like the reference images your client has sent through to you. Denoising is covered here. By default, this is turned off. If you want to turn denoising on, it's not like in V-Ray where you add it as a render element. Here, you just add it in here. And I have been using this. I had a very large render which crashed when I used this, so I now tend to use gather data for later. And then I'll be using the Corona image editor to put in the denoising afterwards if I needed to. To be honest, normally I just render long enough to get rid of noise. Alright, now in V-Ray, we're all used to using V-Ray to then save out the bitmap in the V-Ray frame buffer, in this little frame buffer section here. So here what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using this render output in order to save the file. So you can just click, go to where you want it to be, select the right format, and you're good to go. Now it's important to note here, you've got progressive rendering limits. So here you've got the number of passes, here you've got the time limit to render for, and here you've got a noise level limit. So feel free to adjust these so you can adjust how long you want the scene to render. Here in the camera, you've got various points here which you can adjust. I've not really been adjusting any of these. This is for your GI, and you're really going to be using path tracing and leaving this as it is set up at default. By default, they suggest using this at 20. I've seen some suggestions of putting this up to get more photorealism happening, which you can do, but it adds in a lot of extra time to the render to get a clean render. So you can put this up to 300 or 400 if you like, or 200, but realize that doing so is going to add in a lot of noise and it's going to take a lot longer to render your scene. But apparently you do get a more photorealistic render. So, you know, play with that if you need to or if you want to. But no, it's going to increase that time, that rendering time. Here you have the image filter, and I just always leave this at default at high quality. And here's your render elements. So you don't have to worry so much about this, but you do need to know that these are here, and you need to know specifically about this section and about where to save your file, and using the Corona image editor for post-production if needed. Now, a couple of notes on region rendering is you get region rendering, you just click on region, and you can put in multiple regions here. You can even have overlapping regions in rendering. Now that's fine. Sometimes you're going to be doing tests and you're going to have a region on, and you're going to forget about the region, and you're going to come along and do this. And then you're going to be changing the size because you've been doing tests. You change the size for your final render. And so the region that you had ends up outside of the box, effectively like this. Now you use Backburner, so you send this to Backburner and it renders out black. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. And what's happened is it's trying to render a region outside, even though you've turned it off, it's still trying to render this region outside of the window. So make sure you come here and go remove all and turn this off before you start using Backburner and sending this to render. I do love the fact that you can do multiple regions, and I wish they would add this to V-Ray, because this is extremely useful when you come into production time. You know, you go, I want this region, and I want to do this region, and I need this, and so it's fantastic. One last thing to cover is Corona Converter. So you can click on here, and you can convert your V-Ray scenes into Corona. You might want to not convert HDRIs. This is going to be on by default, so you might not want to change that because it's going to make your V-Ray HDRI into a Corona bitmap, and it's going to mess with your V-Ray HDRI settings. So you might want to turn that off, and then directly just come in and take that V-Ray HDRI map and just load that straight here into the environment slot. When you do use Corona Converter to convert V-Ray to Corona, all of your lights and your light materials are going to come in with the wrong values. So you're going to need to then adjust the lighting in order to get the lighting to match. So that's pretty much everything you need to know in converting from V-Ray to Corona. Now, I love both render engines. I love V-Ray. I think it's an amazing engine. V-Ray Next is fantastic. It has so many additional benefits from V-Ray 3.6. But Corona is also amazing and gives you an amazing product. So personally, I find that working with Corona, it gives me a quicker result. So I get a nicer result faster than working with V-Ray. And for me, that's the benefit of working with Corona. But don't get me wrong, I love both, and I really look forward to working with both from here on out.